Man, these two look so cool next to each other. I already showed you guys the 2012 Gibson M4-Sherman Jason Hook Explorer. Now it's time to see the Epiphone. If you follow my channel, you know that when I have two similar guitars, I do a little bit of a comparison. I'm gonna play these two side by side, show you the similarities and the differences. I already told you which one of the two I prefer in my Gibson video, but I'm gonna back it up with even more facts now. Keep something in mind as I demonstrate these two side by side. It's not an ideal situation, the string gauge is different on both guitars. The Epiphone has a much thicker gauge of strings. I did the setup on the Epiphone matching the Gibson as close as possible. The distance between the pickups and the strings, these both have Seymour Duncan pickups. They are both tuned to C# standard. Now let's hear them. The Epiphone Jason Hook signature is no longer listed in the Epiphone official website, but you can still find it in Jason Hook's official website, Hook's Guitars. It's a package: the guitar, signed copy of Jason's solo album, 2 pics and a signed photo. Of course, even for $1,500 these were sold out long time ago. What's funny is that here in the photo we have the Epiphone. Here in the certificate of authenticity we have the Epiphone as well. But here in the package was this. That's a Gibson with the Epiphone photoshopped right here on top. I'm gonna show you the Gibson prototype that only Jason has a little later in the video. But wait, what's this? Is that the Gibson logo tattooed on his hand? The post is from 2012 as well. Tell me you're about to have a Gibson signature guitar without actually telling me. Anyway, if you've seen my Gibson Jason Hook video, you already know the story. In 2012, Gibson made him a signature guitar. On the certificate of authenticity of the Gibson it was written 400 of you will get the guitar at this time. This means that probably even back then in 2012 they were already planning for a sequel. 2012 was not exactly the best year for Gibson after the FBI raid, the wood confiscation and all, so they probably were testing the ground with only 400 of the Thunder Horse, the Jason Hook and everything. I'm pretty sure they wanted to take a good look at the sales numbers for the first 400 guitars before they released another run. Unfortunately, that second run of Jason Hook's signature Gibsons never came. Fortunately, the Gibson company didn't abandon the idea of a second Jason Hook signature. They did a couple of Gibson prototypes that I'm gonna show you a little bit later in the video, and they decided to play it safe with an Epiphone version. The Epiphones went through a couple of prototypes as well until they settled on this final version, red and white, in 2018. Even this one was a limited run, they were still playing it as safe as possible. Gone was the plastic conduit, the design was much more subtle and appealing to everyone. For me personally, it lost a lot of its character. Luckily, it was still a good package with the certificate of authenticity, with the back, with a lot of Jason Hook's specs. On paper it had the most important stuff: the Seymour Duncan pickups, the cutaway for the high fret axis, the 45-degree cutaway for the forearm support, the iconic Explorer shape in a cool color. Jason even called it the F1 version of his Gibson guitar, which I think it is not, only in color. Because even though this has the same cutaways as the Gibson, the neck is not the same. The fret wire is not the same as well. They are no longer the super jumbo frets that you find on Zakk Wylde's Bullseye Les Pauls. Don't get me wrong, this is an amazing Explorer. It is crazy good deal, it feels good, plays good, sounds amazing, but it feels like something is missing. Let's compare the two. Starting with the similarities in the specs. These are obviously both Explorer shaped, they both have mahogany bodies. Set neck construction, both have mahogany necks. They both have Granadillo fingerboards and 22 frets. They share the same pickups, Seymour Duncan 59 and JB. You can find this 45-degree cutaway that Jason implements on his guitars in both the Gibson and Epiphone, as well as his signature high fret axis cutaway here. That's basically it for the similarities. Now let me show you the differences. The eagle-eyed viewers probably have noticed that the color is different on both guitars. That's not what's important though. The stripes continue alongside the Gibson here on the top and everywhere, where on the Epiphone they're only on the top. And maybe you haven't noticed, but it's red and white as well. The Gibson has a nitrocellulose lacquer finish, the Epiphone has a polyurethane. The biggest and obvious difference is that the Gibson has the PVC electronic cable conduit that is covering the cables for the pickups and the three-way switch because it's front routed. The Epiphone doesn't have it because the three-way switch is rear routed, as I shall demonstrate later. The big question, could have Epiphone made it front routed as the Gibson? I'm pretty sure they could have, but a lot of people actually don't like the PVC conduit. I personally think that this gives the character of Jason Hook's guitars, but a lot of people don't share my opinion, so Epiphone played it safe with the rear routing. Allow me to be a little nitpicky. Look at the white star and the way it's protruding from underneath the pickup. Look how flush it is here with the pickup ring. Small difference, but it's there. Another big one, that this is Epiphone lock-tone locking bridge and a tailpiece. Here we have the PW branded from underneath, Nashville to pneumatic bridge and tailpiece. So that's no longer the same hardware. The pots and the cables are different on both guitars as well. The three-way switch is L-shaped, high quality in the Gibson to accommodate for the front routing. In the Epiphone we have a regular, cheap three-way switch. Both guitars have Granadillo fingerboards, but the one in the Epiphone is so much redder and lighter in color, opposed to the brown one in the Gibson. I think that's an aesthetic choice though, but look at those massive super jumbo frets. Jason specifically chose these for his Gibson, but they are not exactly the same on the Epiphone. That's a different fret wire, still white but not as white as on the Gibson. Since we're at the necks, the Epiphone is a little bit wider on the nut. Also, the climb for the neck joint starts a lot earlier in the Epiphone, making it thicker around the 12th fret, while the Gibson is consistently thin throughout the entire neck. As a matter of fact, let me show it to you from another angle. Here's a side view of both guitars. Now check out the neck heel on the Epiphone and the Gibson. It's much steeper on the Gibson, especially compared to the more rounded off heel of the Epiphone. And you can totally feel this when you grab the frets after the 12th on both guitars. Even though the neck profile is similar for both guitars, slim taper, Epiphone didn't take the extra steps of making it exactly the same as the Gibson's. Here's another big difference in the hardware. The Epiphone has front locking grovers, the Gibson has grover mini lockings that lock from the back. I much prefer these, to be honest. Then the Epiphone has the J-hook signature truss rod bell, the Gibson has the M4-Sherman. Mother of pearl logo for the Gibson and nitro finish, pearloid and poly finish for the Epiphone. Not too much going on the back of both guitars, but obviously for the Gibson we have front routing for the three-way switch, so there's no cavity back here. There's only the cavity for the pots. The Epiphone has it as well, a little bit bigger. And here's the routing for the three-way switch from the back. The position of the strap buttons is the same, the position of the output jack is the same, but this one has a narrower plate, where this has the rectangular. Here's a look at the high fret axis cutaway from the back and the neck heels. The neck joint on the Gibson is a little bit closer to the back. It is not a noticeable difference with the Epiphone, but the big difference is the climb of the neck joint here, allowing the Gibson to stay thinner throughout the entire length, while the Epiphone is a little bit thicker towards the 12th fret. The headstocks and the angle are pretty similar, Gibson logo and Epiphone logo serial numbers in the same position. Obviously this is the back of the front locking grovers, these are the rear locking mini grovers. That's it for the similarities and differences. I hope you learned something, I certainly did. I absolutely hate front locking tuners. They look silly and they're stuck most of the time like this. Now I have to fiddle around with this one, cover it with a cloth, try to get it unstuck with a screwdriver. Be careful not to damage the finish or the headstock, not to chip the tuner. These never work as intended, especially with thicker gauge strings, and they have no business on this guitar. I mean, Jason plays in B standard, what do you expect people to be using for these 942 strings? The damn high E is stuck as well. Oh man, I needed to chew after that outburst. Some cleaning of the fingerboard with oil and some fret polish did the trick for me. Look at this gorgeous bastard, so similar to the M4-Sherman Gibson and yet so different. Let's run through the specs. We still have the Explorer shaped body made out of mahogany, a set neck construction with mahogany neck, granite duo fingerboard, 22 frets, 12-inch radius, 24.75-inch scale length. We have the Grover front locking tuners here on the headstock, black veneer Epiphone logo, Seymour Duncan humbucker pickups 59 for the neck and JB for the bridge, same as the Gibson. Epiphone lock-tone locking bridge and a tailpiece. Let's have a look under the pickups. Nothing too unusual, the red paint continues here as well. Epiphone are consistent in the messy routing job that I see on most of their guitars. The neck joint is offset like on the Goth series Epiphones that I've reviewed. Bridge pickup cavity is unpainted. Did this one have a QR sticker or something? I doubt it. The routing for the cables of the pickups is a little bit too close to the top. Good thing this is not a flame maple veneer or anything like that, it's just a mahogany body. Overall, as usual, pretty amateur looking rough job with the routing for the cables. The pickups, in the neck position we have SH1N, designation Seymour Duncan 59. Same pickups as in the Gibson, Seymour Duncan Made in America logo, open coil. No surprises for the bridge, I'm assuming SH4, made in 2018, this is the Seymour Duncan JB. Unfortunately short screws for both pickup rings and they were a little bit hard to remove, they were stuck to the rings. The Gibson measured around 50k ohms for the JB bridge and around 7 for the 59 neck. Let's see what we got in the Epiphone. I've selected the JB or the bridge and it is 15.70. Switching over to the 59 neck, 7.25. The middle position, 496. So these are a little bit hotter in the Epiphone, just a little bit. We got the typical controls for an Explorer, a 3-way switch, volume, volume, tone, and unfortunately one of the reflector parts of the knob fell off and this one is a little bit loose, so I might have to remove and tighten it. Let's do that now. I'm gonna remove this thing by pulling it gently up. Yep, there you go. I have a spare and I'm gonna use it for the video to make it look pretty. If you ever wondered what a top hat knob looks like without the reflective part, here it is, and this is the replacement. Pretty boy. The bridge and tailpiece are Epiphone lock tone. I'm a huge fan of these actually. Usually they help me preserve the setup on guitars. On this particular one I'm gonna do a new setup, but it's good to have them anyway. Individual cellos held in place by a single spring. Epiphone logo on the bottom, they lock to the struts right here. Thumb wheel and screwdriver adjustable metric. The tailpiece is Epiphone lock tone as well. It has the Epiphone logo on the bottom and locks using these here to the struts. I haven't weighed one of these in a while, so let's do it. The lock tone bridge weighs 47 grams. The tailpiece, ooh, that is pretty heavy at 72. Usually the aluminum ones are 36, half that. The finish that all of you know, it is red with white stripes. But did you know that there was a prototype with the reverse colors, red stripes and white body? It also had EMG pickups instead. As a matter of fact, let me show you that video.
Hey, what's up? It's Santa Claus. No, I'm just kidding. It's Jason, Hook from Five Finger Death Punch. In the holiday spirit, I would like to give away one of my brand new Epiphone Jason Hook signature model Explorers.
Okay, a couple of things I noticed besides the active pickups. It has a blacked out hardware, black tuners, black bridge and tailpiece. Also, that's the 80s layout of the switch and the knobs. It doesn't have his signature high fret axis cutaway and it doesn't have the 45-degree cutaway on the top horn. It only has the stripes on the top. This was posted in 2016, the actual signature came out in 2018, so this must have been a signature prototype. And I must admit that I like it. And as I was editing the Epiphone video, this happened. I tagged Jason in a couple of posts about the Gibson on Instagram. He was kind enough to follow me. No pressure, I guess. I cannot talk any more shit about the Epiphone. I'm kidding, he knows. I'm sure he wanted the Epiphone to be as similar to the Gibson as possible. You know what? Go follow Jason on Instagram and YouTube right now. He's a pretty cool guy and he does giveaways like this one.
It's Jason Hook here. As you can see, I'm holding my signature Epiphone M4-Sherman. I absolutely love these guitars. This really is sort of a Formula One version of the standard Explorer. Anyway, I decided last night that I'd like to give one away for Christmas. A lot of people are suffering during this terrible downtime during the pandemic. You know, the whole world sort of is flipped upside down. So I thought last night, maybe there's something I can do that will be sort of a pay it forward thing.
That is pretty cool, and I've seen some fan covers from kids using his signature guitar and jerseys. As I already demonstrated earlier, a big difference between the Gibson and Epiphone, the stripes on the Epiphone don't continue along the sides of the guitar, here. They are only on the top, which is fine, I guess. You still have the star underneath the pickup. But what's most important are two features that are included also in the Gibson. The 45-degree cutaway here for the forearm, that Jason designed, and the high fret axis cutaway down here. These two features, combined with the finish, make this Explorer pretty unique and cool. The biggest difference though, the Epiphone doesn't have the front routing and the tubing. Luckily, we don't have to wonder how would it look like if there was tubing here in front. Jason has a Gibson version of this. As a matter of fact, let's check out the video. I think this one looks much better and I would absolutely go for it if it was available. Check it out. I know, I already talked about this. I know a lot of people don't like the front routing and the tubing. I've asked like 10 people that walked into the store, only 2 of them seemed to like it. The rest preferred how the Epiphone looked. So I totally understand why they did it. They played it safe like this. I personally think that it lost a lot of character without the PVC conduit. The way I would do the red one is black out all the hardware, the bridge, the tuners, put an ebony board and the tubing in front. That would have looked so sick. Imagine it with a red case and everything, how badass it would have been. We have a set neck construction with a mahogany neck, and this is a Granadillo fingerboard. The correct name is Granadillo. It's an extremely hard wood, almost no pores to it. Here's an interesting fact though, both guitars have Granadillo fingerboard, but this one is much reddish looking brownish, and it goes pretty well with the red finish. Check it out on the Gibson, it's much more dark brown and goes together with the green pretty well. So props to Epiphone and Gibson for choosing the right boards. Look at the reddish one with the red, it's a good choice for both guitars. Check them out side by side and look at the fret wire on the Epiphone. These are jumbo frets, but nowhere near as big as the super jumbos here. Remember, this is Zakk Wylde's fret wire for his bullseye that Jason took in the factory. Don't get me wrong, they're not small on the Epiphone, but compared to the massive ones on the Gibson, they're dwarfed. Only the Jason Hook M4-Sherman and Zakk Wylde's guitars have this massive super jumbo fret wire. On paper these are both Granadillo, but they're pretty different. We have 22 of these jumbo frets, 12-inch radius, 24.75-inch scale length. Side dot inlays and plastic dot inlays on the fingerboard. Some sort of composite nut. This is 2018, so it's probably new bone by Graphtec. The Explorer headstock with the black veneer, those front locking growers that I dislike, and the Epiphone logo. This is pearloid, this is not mother of pearl. Let me show you the difference with the Gibson. Look at the Gibson mother of pearl logo, it dances on the light. Also check out the nitro finish on the headstock for the Gibson. No nitro for the Epiphone, it's polyurethane finish over here. Epiphones have poly finish, the Gibsons have the nitro. Two-way adjustable truss rod for the Epiphone, the Gibson has the traditional one-way. The cavity is covered by this traditional Epiphone bell, Jason Hook written on it, 2-ply, 3 screws. Now let's see the differences in the necks. 43mm or 1.69 at the first fret, the Gibson was 43.9. The 12th fret is at 53.8mm, On the Gibson, it was 53 exactly. Thickness of the neck at the first fret, 20.8 mm. The Gibson was at 21. Thickness at the 12th fret is where the big difference is, 23 mm for the Epiphone, 21.7 for the Gibson. I've already demonstrated why, it's because of the difference of the neck heel of both guitars. Body thickness of the Epiphone, 41.7 mm, so the polyurethane finish is a little bit thicker than the 40.7 of the Gibson. A consistent 12-inch radius throughout the entire fingerboard, this is typical for Epiphone and Gibson guitars. The Epiphone has a slim taper neck profile, it is pretty similar to the Gibson as I can see here. Even though the neck profile is similar, the neck heel and the slope make these two a lot different. The heel on the Epiphone is not that steep, so it's a little bit thicker towards the 12th fret, and this means that the high fret axis is a little bit compromised compared to the Gibson. Same as the Gibson, not too much going on the back here, there are no stripes. This is a polyurethane finish as I already mentioned, and I'm counting at least 1, 2, at least 4 or 5 pieces of mahogany for the body. You can see them in front as well, the seam lines. Here's what the high fret axis cutaway looks from the back, it is pretty useful this one. And the electronic compartments, starting with the 3-way switch compartment, which is pretty huge. Rear routing as I showed you, the cables come from underneath the pickups down there. This is a typical 3-way switch that is used on Les Paul guitars, not the L-shaped one like on the Gibson, and here is the compartment for the pots. These are the Jinsun made in Korea pots, some cables, some ground wire and the output jack. Here's the routing for it. Here is a better look at both compartments, paint in both of them. They are okay I guess, but this does feel like an Epiphone, not like a Gibson. The quality is apparent. These are the covers for the electronics compartment. Good thing that they're shielded on the back side, but check this out, this is some paint markings. Here as well on the 3-way switch cover, some red paint. You know what this means? The guitars are made in such a hurry that they don't even wait for the paint to dry before applying the plastics. It's not like the demand was huge anyway. Here's what the output jack looks like, non-rotating, it grips to the plate from the back like this. The plate is this rectangular chrome one. Original strap button here in the middle and one on the neck joint. The neck is probably made out of 3 pieces of mahogany, but it's finished in red, so I cannot really tell. Epiphone 2018. This is the logo for the guitars from 2018 I guess. The serial number confirms that it is 2018 04, the 4th month, and 23 is the code for the Indonesian factory. You see in this line here? This is the seam line between the neck and the headstock. The Grover front locking tuners, these are not made in the same factory as the ones on the Gibson, they are much more high quality. These are probably made in China or Korea or Indonesia. The entire construction with the nut washer and screw weighs 36 grams, a little lighter than the 39 on the Gibson rear locking tuners. I'm gonna set this one in drop B with 11 to 56 Diodario strings. Even though it says that these are suitable for D-tuning, they are good for drop B because the 6th string is 56. Usually on 7-string guitars, the 7th string is 56 gauge. These will work just fine for drop B. I like the Epiphone Locktone locking hardware because it allows me to string the guitar without worrying that the tailpiece is gonna fall off and scratch the finish or something like that. Now the way you work with this, and I'm using the microphone of the camera for this one, because some of them, you hear this? They have a distinctive click when they align with the holes. And let me show you the last one. Let me focus. You're supposed to see through the hole when it's aligned properly. You align them so they face the strings this way. You string through. Then when you start to rotate, the mechanism catches and locks the string. And you get about, let's see, 90 degrees angle of it. Now I know the string has catched, the mechanism has locked by itself, and we have a proper tension. You don't lock them by a screwdriver or anything, they lock by themselves, but they have to be properly aligned towards the nut, and the hole has to be exposed either by this distinctive click, or you have to see the line shining through them. It's a bit tricky to do. I'm not a huge fan of these, but it is what it is. I much prefer the locking grovers on the Gibson right there. They lock from the back and they're much easier to work with. Check it out. Nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. At one point it's gonna catch and lock, and it's gonna start to rotate. There we go. Just have to put it in the nut right here, and now it's locked. Check this out, the holes in the tuners are a little bit off center, and if you don't align them properly like I did on most tuners, one of them might end up looking like this. You see, I didn't align this one, so it's not properly wrapping around the tuner, which is not a huge problem. It's still locking, it's still holding, but it looks awful and it's messing with my OCD. Nobody's gonna notice it, but I know it's there. I'm not gonna mess with this one anymore. I don't wanna break the string, but you see what I mean with tuners like this. You have to align them properly. We have to take greater care. Sometimes they stick, meaning that the string gets stuck in them and you have to unscrew them with a screwdriver. They're not ideal. I don't like them. I managed to do a similar setup on both guitars, the string height, the distance between the pickup and the string, so we should have a similar comparison, but remember the string gauge is still different. The Epiphone weighs 3,311 grams or 7.29 pounds. Now let's compare it to the Gibson. The mighty Gibson weighs 3,630 grams or exactly 8 pounds. But remember, these are basically different guitars. The wood is different, the finish is different, the tubing, so it's normal to have some difference in weight. Unlike the Gibson, the Epiphone comes in this soft back, which is branded Epiphone. It is pretty neat though, because a lot of signature guitars like the 2013 Matte Heavy signature that I'm gonna show you came only in a box without a back. And a back for an Explorer shaped guitar is hard to find, trust me. So it's pretty cool of Epiphone to have included one. Maybe they could have done something to it, like the Jason Hook name, M4, some badging or something like that, make it a little bit more distinctive. It has this big pocket here for strings and accessories, and underneath it another pocket. I don't know what you can put here, some tools or whatever. Nothing unusual. You have your nylon handle that separates into and straps on the back so you can wear it as a backpack. It is a perfect fit for the Explorer, but almost no padding on the inside, so you have to be careful carrying this one around. And no strap to tie down the neck. For the case candy or the back candy, we have two separate pockets, starting with this one that contains the owner manual and actually some pretty useful information here, especially if you're a beginner. I recommend you read those. It's how to adjust your intonation, string action, tuning, all sorts of interesting and useful information. Then there's this piece of paper telling you how to adjust the truss rod that's under the fingerboard. I advise you not to do this unless you know exactly what you're doing, or at least be extremely careful. Leave this to a professional tech or learn before you do it. A big Epiphone bumper sticker that you can put on your refrigerator. A big poster that I've seen included with a lot of Epiphone guitars. Nothing unusual. The Carina Explorer MV over here. We've seen this in other videos. Here's the back of it. This is the most important item in your bag. Do not discard certificate of authenticity inside. This is what it looks like. Black folder with the Epiphone logo, silver sparkle. These usually have the photo of the artist. We have Jason Hook here with his cool black and red hairstyle matching the colors of the Epiphone. And here's the certificate itself. It has the exact name of the guitar, limited edition Jason Hook M4 Explorer. Weirdly, Jason called it the M4-Sherman. I've never seen Sherman written anywhere on these certificates. I've seen Sherman written only on the Gibson. This certificate stays closed for most of the time and the photo is touching the certificate itself, so some of the ink of the photo and lettering of the certificate have leaked into each other, as you can see. So if you want to keep these in mint condition, leave it open somewhere. Anyway, now let's hear both guitars. Before I start, I want to give you a disclaimer. Even though these are set pretty similar, they have the same Seymour Duncan pickups, the string gauge is different on both guitars. The Epiphone has 1156 Diodarios, the Gibson has 1052 Elixirs. This will make the Epiphone sound a little bit more beefier in the low mids. Both guitars are tuned to C# standard. Cleans were impossible because of the difference in the string gauge. Pressing down on the first frets with loose or too tight strings made them go out of tune every time. If you want to hear the clean sound of these pickups, check out my Gibson video. Let's go! Is the Epiphone M4 a good guitar? Yes, it definitely is. Is it a cool guitar? Yes, it is. But it could have been way cooler. Again, the big question, which one did I prefer? The full-blown Gibson version or the scaled-down Epiphone? Well, this time I'm not gonna say it. I said it in my previous video. Most of you probably can guess which one I had more fun with and which one I prefer, but I'm not gonna say it anyway. Figure it out, Sherlock. Back to the Epiphone. Would I suggest you buy one today? Well, let's see. The initial deal was around $900 for the bag and everything. A lot of people, including my friend, bought them discounted to around $600. You can still find some good ones on Reverb for $900 to $1,000. I mean, look at that. There is one in Switzerland that seems to have everything included. The bag, the certificate of authenticity. It is even listed as brand new. It's unmodified. This is a brand new Jason hook that was released in 2018. And look at this. It's discounted. The M4 is still a hard sell. People are not too much into these. I think these are great future collectibles. Given that they're limited edition signature, and if you manage to find them mint, yeah, I think it's a good deal. Get one if you want it. Back in 2020, Jason parted ways with 5-Finger Death Punch. 2 years ago, he turned 50. He's 52 years old now. I know, can you believe this, man? Time flies. Damn, I wish I looked that good when I turned 50, but I don't look good now, so no chance. That's a big number, and I imagine it's a huge turning point in somebody's life. I totally understand and support his decision. I mean, look at Metallica's latest performances. They're not young men anymore. Hell, I'm only 37 and my back hurts every goddamn day. Also, did you notice that cool Gibson? No neck pickup means no need for a 3-way pickup selector, so he installed a cool red kill switch. Oh man, I can't help but to think of the cool red versions that Gibson and Epiphone could have given us. Instead, they've played it safe with the Epiphone, which is still a good guitar. I just wish they were a little bit crazier and put some more character in it. I know it didn't make much sense to risk it, but come to think of it, these didn't sell that well. They were always discounted. I think a red Gibson version would have sold out as well, and the Epiphone would have done better if it was a little bit more interesting.